Hello guys, and the level of trust to Putin fell to its lowest since the start of the full-scale invasion, and somehow I'm not surprised at all. I can just imagine the fear of those people who conducted this questionnaire for the Russian Public Opinion Research Center. Just imagine how can they share these results with the Kremlin dictator. In Russia, you do not ask such questions directly, so they designed something like name any politician you would trust to handle the most important state decisions. And it turns out only 30 named Putin. Among the other persons they trust were a lot of very weird characters, and we will discuss them later. But for me, it was more interesting to try and find the answer. What changed their trust? What changed their opinion about Putin so much after these 4 years of extremely exhausting and dangerous for the Russian Federation war? And they named exactly the things we discuss on this channel, beginning with sharp increase in utility tariffs and finishing with constant internet shutdowns. This is huge because for a quarter of a century, Putin was, or at least seemed, the favorite leader of the Russian Federation, and now less than 30% trust him serious state decisions. And indeed, he handles them really bad. My name is Anna, I'm from Ukraine, I'm in Ukraine, and if you want to see the defeat and demilitarization of Russia that has already started and is the only working peace plan, subscribe and share these videos to spread the truth. You know, I was very pleasantly surprised to read about such research conducted officially on the territory of the Russian Federation by their Russian Public Opinion Research Center. You can Google and read more on Moscow Times, for example. And they conduct such polls about the trust and attitudes towards different politicians inside Russia literally every year. And in 2026, they observe a sharp decline of support for Vladimir Putin. And of course, there are a lot of reasons that influence such answers, but I even like the way they need to design questions to be on the safe side. They do not ask, as they ask in Ukraine or in US or in France, do you support, I don't know, Trump, Macron, Zelensky? But they put it in disguise, saying like, name any politician you trust to handle important state matters. I had to copy this question not to make mistake, and I believe that this Russian newspeak is a separate topic for our linguistic research. But anyway, only 32% said Putin, and the rest named a lot of different politicians, some of whom we don't know at all, but there were also a lot of very interesting and dangerous characters. Just imagine Medvedev, the one that constantly threatens the world and writes a lot of BS. I think he is a great competitor in that to Elon Musk himself. So Russians trust him. He actually had a very low support at the beginning of the full-scale invasion because of his dependence on alcohol and very unpredictable comments. But now, as the world becomes more and more chaotic and unpredictable, they kind of enjoy his tweets. There was also Mishustin and Lavrov, and interesting fact, Zyuganov. Maybe you don't know this man, but I do remember him since the times of the collapse of the USSR when I was really small, because that man is the leader of the Russian communists. Just imagine, communists are still very popular in Russia, and many say that right now Vladimir Putin sees them as his main competitors. Okay, so anyway, the numbers for Putin were really bad, the lowest since the start of the full-scale invasion, and I think his best time was before he began doing his plastic surgeries, that is like 2010 or something, and then he began changing really quickly, and that somehow influenced his outlook, and he congratulated the Russian women with the 8th of March, and somehow His team, or people who stopped trusting him in that team, shared the recordings where he looks really bad, constantly coughs, and does not look like this, supreme leader, alpha male. No, not at all. He looks like a very tired, coughing granny. And what is more important? Because this actually shows us the things that are bad inside the Russian society, and also the things that trigger their reaction and opposition to war, something that we actually need. So number one, and this reminds me of Trump to some extent, was sharp increase in utility tariffs. When I hear the word tariffs, I immediately see Trump, but this is also the pain for the Russian people. Sharp increase in utility tariffs, and you know that this increase in prices does not give them quality services, and dozens of Russian regions did not have proper heating, gas supply, not because of the Ukrainian attacks, but because of empty regional budgets, and that was a big problem for them. Number two, mass internet shutdowns. Recently, we discussed this test that the Kremlin conducted in Moscow, the capital of the Russian Federation, turning off internet. And it turns out it is still off in Moscow. 4 days in a row, a number of districts do not have access neither to their mobile internet nor to voice calls. Just imagine. And what if we're talking about something important? And how bad this is for the already seriously damaged by Russia's war effort businesses that keep closing because of new taxes. And that was also another reason why Russians stopped trusting Putin and his vision of their economic future. Also, the fear of the general conscription is very big there, because they know what happens to the Russian soldiers and how quickly they return back to their families. They don't want to repeat such experience, and they fear that it may happen to them in 2026, as obviously the Kremlin has no money to pay its contract war criminals. And also banking crisis and problems with the withdrawals of money. And you know that not only ATMs now filter which Russians can get access to their money and when, but even they discuss such option for these physical branches of banks. When you come to withdraw your own money, a normal sum of your own money, and any cashier, any worker of that bank can deny you in this. Why? Because most likely Putin is already all in with his dirty hands in the pockets of these Russians who keep describing themselves as apolitical when politics actually destroys their life, or better say their indifference. And war in Russia. They say it that way. They say war in Russia because as I record this video, there were reports about fires and explosions in Moscow and St. Petersburg, some kind of sabotage happening. But there are also serious fights, serious explosions, air raid alerts, GPS jamming, problems with infrastructure, military infrastructure that return to a lot of Russian regions. And I'm not talking about active war zones like Belgorod and Kursk. I'm also talking about the Russian RIA. And just before recording this video, I was scrolling my X and came across one Russian propagandist, Kalashnikov, who was a friend of Girkin, and he was whining about Ukrainian Flamingo missiles now reaching deep inside the Russian RIA, like thousands of kilometers, and the fact that they have nothing to answer because they have demonstrated all the terror and violence they could at the very beginning of the full-scale invasion. They continue it as the only working strategy for them, but it doesn't help them win. On contrary, war returns to more and more of the Russian regions. The budgets are empty and the public opinion is shifting. Putin turns off internet, and this fact only makes his people more and more angry because they count the things they are losing. They don't care about the people on the front lines. It's the Russian approach forever. But They think about businesses they need to close, about their deposits in banks that they cannot reach anymore, about their inability to travel the world, closed airports, lack of gasoline. And now, for that all, they may be sent to the meat grinders on the front line. Definitely not what they wanted and how they envisioned the special military operation when he promised them a blitzkrieg in 2022. And you are right, this is not just Putin's war, because millions supported him, millions loved the idea. But now, after numerous failures, loss of this geopolitical influence, they will blame not themselves, but they will blame him. And that's why he looks worse and worse with each day. And believe me, it is always like that with big federations, unions, and empires. They collapse really quickly. And back in 1990, even the US president could not predict the fall of the USSR. But then it happened, and I personally experienced that too as a small kid. And I believe I will also experience the collapse of the Putin's empire. Subscribe to do that together. Also follow me on Anna Danilchuk for new videos, weekly longer conversations like the one about Russian regions that began openly opposing the special military operation, including their deputies that now criticize Putin from tribunes of their regional councils. Follow me on X, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, Discord, and now we have a Substack platform with a Sunday newsletter, so subscribe that too. And support our campaign with United Aid Operation, Ukraine Aid Operations, that help us a lot with drones and ground drones for the Ukrainian soldiers. I will leave the link in the pinned comment. If you feel like doing something good, that is your opportunity that I and all Ukrainians will be forever grateful for. Thank you for buying me coffees, becoming my patrons and sponsors of the channels. Check the merch shop, the link in the description. But most importantly, thank you for standing with Ukraine. Slava Ukraini!